This podcast is rated R for restricted. Under 17 requires accompanying parent or adult guardian.
Mission 250.
Have you ever been in an institution? Cells.
Interlinked.
Do they keep you in a cell?
Cells.
Interlinked.
Cells.
When you're not performing your duties, do they keep you in a little box? Cells.
Interlinked.
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 What's it like to hold the hand of someone you love? Interlinked. Cells.
Interlinked.
Do they teach you how to feel finger to finger? Interlinked.
Interlinked. Cells. Interlinked.
You guys
I'm
fail
just
your
going to say
baseline.
enhance.
It's like,
Enhance.
TC's
Enhance.
way off his baseline.
Way off
Computer
baseline.
enhance.
But yeah, welcome to the Mission 250 Filmcast, where we typically watch the best movies ever made, and sometimes we do special episodes like this one, where we do a related movie to one of the best movies ever made. And we're going to watch Blade Runner, or we have watched Blade Runner 2049, 2017, directed by Denis Villeneuve. And this week we have a very special guest, Andy.
Hey, I'm a one-name celebrity, just Andy.
Yes.
That's it.
Well, we
Just
can,
Andy.
We can
He
use your
goes
last
by
name if you like.
Andy.
But Andy, how about before we get going on this movie, your theater? Why don't you talk about it for a bit?
Oh, I'd love to. My last name is Smith. I don't mind people knowing about it.
Well, like you're so unique, they're going to track that down. Yeah.
It's a real tough person to find. So for those of you who didn't listen to the last Star Wars podcast, I am starting a independent movie theater and coffee house in Rochester, Minnesota, about an hour and 15 minutes south of the Twin Cities, St. Paul and Minneapolis. And we are still sort of in the development phase, but we actually have had a lot of exciting stuff happening. We're still working on all the kind of stuff, business stuff needs, like licenses and the county and all that kind of fun stuff that I don't really want to get into. But it does look like hopefully we'll be able to open in March of this year. So
Nice.
really focusing on giving a place for indie cinema. And for those of you out there who are listening from anywhere other than Los Angeles, New York, or Chicago, maybe Austin, you know that independent theater is often very hard to find, even some of the major films that make awards chatter. So we're trying to do that in a very mid-city in Rochester, Minnesota, give a place for that, as well as a really great place to build community and talk about film and educate each other. And above all that, just put ourselves in other people's shoes to help us understand other people a lot better through film. So Grey Duck Theater, Gray, and then we spell theater just the regular American way, Theater. Check us out, Grey Duck Theater. We're on Twitter, Instagram. grayducktheater.com is our website. We'd love to have you come check out a movie and talk with me about film.
Awesome. John, I'm jealous of you. You get to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, John's going to go every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to
Yes.
support this picture.
Good thing I don't have a family.
As long as you guys screen Blade Runner at the midnight showing. So Andy, this movie, we watched Blade Runner, the original. Some of us watched the final cut and one of us watched the theatrical cut. So we're all freshly, we know like the backstory and the canon and all that stuff. And I assume you do too. So why don't you give us your thoughts on the original and the new one as well?
Sure. So this is kind of interesting because I was on Star Wars when we did, I think, Force Awakens, which is a pretty sort of divisive film. I think there's people who really like it and some people who really don't like it. Too Long Didn't Listen. I really love that movie. Blade Runner is interesting because I feel like a lot of people love the original. In fact, anyone who really knows anything about it loves it at this point because it's an old enough movie where, like, unless you really try to watch it, you don't really watch it. But I'm actually on the other. I'm split on Blade Runner 1982. I'll call it that to keep it distinct from the Ryan Gosling.
So you're not as happy about the original. Even did you see the final cut?
I did. That's the one without the voiceover, I believe.
Well, it's without
one of
the
the
voiceover,
ones.
but it was released quite recently, relatively
2007.
recently, with a lot of remastered stuff, including additional visual effects.
Oh, interesting. Then I don't think I saw that one because the one I saw, I didn't want to have any remastered effects because I wanted to.
You want the remastered, dude. You want the remastered. They're good.
It's an interesting point because you want. It's an odd thing to have the film like redone and then done yet again. I think in this case, like the final cut is the only version that Ridley Scott actually had full control over. Unlike even the director's cut, he did not have full control over. Just oddly enough. So that, in some ways, that seems to possibly excuse the final cut being something that is worth seeing. But and it definitely, I mean, it looks really good, and there are no like animal fart jokes or anything like that. Not like a Lucas thing.
Yeah. The version I saw, I do remember I was struck by how good it looked. So but obviously the original film is known for that too. So it's hard for me. I don't know the terminology because there's a director's cut, a cinematic cut, a theater cut, There's
like 7, yeah.
The work print cut, the international cut. Yes. Yeah, there's a bunch.
Exactly. My basic thought is, so if you take a screenwriting class anywhere in the country at any film school, whether it's in Saskatchewan or LA, the first rule of screenwriting is always what? Show, don't tell, right? That's what the medium is about. The screenplay is to advance the story. It's not to tell the story because you do it with the visuals. And I think Blade Runner 1982 is interesting because in some ways it does that in some of the best ways of all time. It invented the sort of dark future aesthetic. It doesn't tell you that the world is worse in the future because we rely too much on technology and because we allow corporations to gain control. It shows us a dark skyline where it's raining in Los Angeles where it never is. And there's only, like Nintendo or Coca-Cola, symbols everywhere. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. That side of it is a masterpiece. But then I think, ironically, the other side of things, the actual plot and the characters and the way that they sort of develop what actually happens in the film is, and it's going to be controversial, I think is complete shit.
No!
Complete shit.
Oh, I think God.
I just, it's just, none of the characters
finally some
are developed well. The way that they present women in the film, I think, is terrible.
Part of the point, though, wouldn't you say?
No, I think that's what people say to me. I think
it's
people
about
say
slaves.
That to excuse it. I think people say that to excuse it. Because there's a way that they could do sort of, the replicants, females versus males are, whatever, they're created by males and so they're sexualized, blah, blah, blah. But my argument against that is that the male replicants are not, equally done in that same sort of way. They're not like the paragons of manliness, which is what you would think if they're really trying to go off the reflections of what man would want. And I just think, honestly, I just don't resonate with anything.
Wait, couldn't you say that that's not true? Because Roy, we talked about how he's kind of like the specimen of being like an Aryan specimen.
Yeah,
so
like almost the
kind of a
Ubermensch
Nazi,
or whatever the hell. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I think maybe you'd have a better case if there wasn't did you guys have a separate episode on the original Blade Runner? Am I going into an already foregone conclusion?
We did, yeah. Last week we did.
We really loved it, and TC went along with this, and so now I think he's really happy.
I liked it, but now I got some refreshing hate. I love it.
Yeah.
Good.
I think the aspect of like the sexualization of women would have more resonance with me if there wasn't, this is getting a little heavy, if there wasn't what I see as a borderline rape scene or sexual assault scene with the original Deckard.
Right, where he tells, I mean, yeah.
Do you know how that's explained?
Really poorly done. And I think that sort of shatters any chance it had at that particular point that it's trying to, if it was trying to make that, which I don't think it was.
Andy, I totally agree with you. Do you know what the intent of that scene was, though? Just for your own? I'm sure you might.
No, hit me. I haven't.
So Ridley Scott's explanation was, I agree with you, it's totally rapey, but what's supposed to be happening, and he failed at doing it, is that Rachel is bad.
He admits that he failed too.
He doesn't admit on the commentary. He admits that it was bad, and that he says it's the worst part of the movie. But it's Rachel doesn't know how to interpret her own feelings, and Deckard can tell that. So when she's trying to escape, she's confused because she's having all these feelings for Deckard, and Deckard realizes that. And then by him telling her the things like "touch me" and things like that, he's not being rapey, according to Ridley Scott. He's teaching her how to deal with her feelings.
Yeah. A model for any young man trying to woo a woman. It's no means they just don't know how to communicate. But
so that doesn't explain away any of it. It's still bad.
But it gives a bad impression. But you can sort of try to buy some of that. But I think it's a fair point.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's for me, and this is also going to be sort of sacrosanct, but the teardrops in rain thing, I just rolled my eyes the whole time.
Really? I loved it.
That's my favorite part of the movie.
I loved it.
I just don't think it earns. I don't
Yeah.
think it earns that final moment. I think I don't know if this is sort of apocryphal or real. I think there's a story that like that actor just got on, like he was ad-libbing those lines, or he had wrote them himself.
What he
Yeah.
did was he edited down the script so that the Tears in the Rain line is his, and then there were
Rucker Hauer's.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
he
even
actually
remember this line.
Did put that in there. The Tears in the Rain. Yeah, but there were the whole like speech was there. He just sort of like edited the speech a little bit, and he made it a lot more concise than it was, and then he added the Tears in the Rain at the end of it.
To me, it feels like an actor who wrote his own lines. Like
But it seems like poetry, doesn't it? And he seems like a kind of replicant that would read poetry and speak like that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty moving. Part of it is buying the whole scene of him forgiving Deckard or seeing Deckard as not different than he is, and that being a really cool turn of events, given everything that had happened up to that point. But again, I think that you're definitely right, though, that if you want to identify the weak point in the movie, in contrast to the atmosphere and the just sort of the direction of it, the way it gives you a sense of time and place is amazing. I think you said it really, really well in terms of how it does it. And so you certainly can see a relative weakness there, if nothing else, if not flat out crap, according to you. But
yeah, I'm just struck by the subtlety of sort of the visual style, the set design, the lighting, but it's, to me, the dialogue and the plot is so clunky that it's the weirdest of films, where like the easiest stuff to be not clunky with, they were clunky with, and the hardest stuff to nail, they nailed. And so to me, it's a really difficult classic in that way. If I was talking to someone who was like, I really love some classic film, what should I see? I would never immediately say, you should watch Blade Runner. It'd be way, way down on my list of sort of classics, because I think it's sort of a half classic, half poorly done plot and character development.
I think it's something.
I love it.
I don't know this, but this might be upsetting too. But there's something about science fiction and fantasy where you're just looking for the world building and the atmosphere, and sometimes it's almost expected, or it's not really. You don't necessarily expect the same amount of character development or a dialogue or things like that, even whether it's books or movies of these kind of genres. And it's just, you could make some arguments like with some Star Trek series or whatever, it's like, hey, you're not necessarily going to have like the most eloquent dialogue ever, but you've got some really interesting scenarios and really interesting world building, and that's pretty awesome. It may be something that maybe there's a bit of forgiveness to this kind of genre for doing that. But I totally agree that when I started to watch the commentary tracks for the final cut, I was even more absorbed by the film, I think, because I wasn't watching the dialogue or anything like that. I was just like listening to the director talk about the scenes, but then also really just watching everything that was happening, as opposed to like necessarily paying attention to the movie plot. And you get even more of an appreciation for this way scenes are set up and how everything looks.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you, but I think I would say that proves my point. Like just today, I had sort of on in the background, I didn't have the actual film, but I was having sort of a YouTube playlist of just small scenes to just sort of have, to kind of seep in the feeling of it. And it's the most I ever enjoyed Blade Runner, because that's the strength of the movie. I think sitting down and thinking about the actual characters and the plot is just many times a slog. And I think we get over that sometimes by dwelling on the philosophical ideas that are more visual than story. And I think that overcomes our discussion of it. And I think there are some definite weaknesses with the rest of the film.
It does. And it helps. I think it helps that it's Harrison Ford, who I think is arguably, he doesn't have to do much even or even say good things. So he's just great to watch. And there's just something very charismatic about him. And so I think that also helps a lot. But and you're right. The other part is that it's a good point too, is arguably if you think that it's crappy acting, dialogue, whatever, the ideas are still very interesting. And the source material, Philip K. Dick's novel, is really interesting as well. And so just the ideas that it brings up are also quite worth like exploring and thinking about.
I think actually Blade Runner might have also been hurt for me, and this is perhaps a good transition, because I thought Blade Runner 2049 was everything that Blade Runner should have been. because they still nailed the visuals, they still nailed the philosophical thought, they still nailed the fact that it's not an action movie at all. The action set pieces are incredibly muted. Most of the time, you can't tell what's going on. But the character development, the point, and the thought behind it, I thought was incredibly well done. So I think for me, when I think of Blade Runner, I think, damn, 2049 is an almost perfect, thoughtful sci-fi piece.
Another perfect movie from Andy. Anyway.
I should, you should get this by now. When I throw around perfect, I very much, I like to throw it around a lot more than other people because I think perfectionism hurts us. Right. But I think for what they went out to do, again, it was perfect.
You say the same thing with Star Wars. You said it very well in terms of what they wanted to accomplish or what was in the realm of their ability to accomplish given what they were working with. They did as good as they possibly could have
for
done,
making
arguably,
money.
Right? Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Burn.
Sorry. Anyway, perfect. Go ahead.
Although, side note, so Denis Villeneuve, who is one of my favorite directors working today, coming off of this, he actually is staying in the sci-fi genre. I don't know if you guys know this.
Dune.
Is making a Dune, which I'm so pumped about.
But he takes risks too. That's what's great. He has like a vision of what he wants to accomplish, and then he goes out and does it. And he certainly doesn't seem to be necessarily trying to please people. I mean, he's trying to make really good work. I mean, Arrival was the first film I saw from him, and we saw that in the theater, and that film really astonished me. I thought it was just amazing. And I thought it was amazingly effective. Just the way they did the cinematography and the audio in that movie were really like nothing.
You know what
really
I noticed
seen.
he does, and he did it in this one too, and I love it. I think the first time I ever realized it, if you guys are familiar with Children of Men, I know that's not him, but they do the same kind of cut where it's the beginning of the very last, very long take where Clive Owen's kind of running through the city, and as soon as that scene starts, it's a hard cut from another scene, and it's framed symmetrically, and there's a loud like sound.
Yeah,
that happens in this movie, cutting to the scene where he's walking through Las Vegas, and it's all just orange. It happens in Arrival when it cuts to the spaceship once, and it's just like landscape and spaceship. And whatever, there's probably a name for it, but he does it all the time.
It's called dropping the beat.
Yeah, drop the bass.
Or drop the bass.
I can't wait for him to do it in Dune. I'm sure he will. But yeah, it's just like something that he utilizes a lot.
Nice.
And it's good stuff.
His drone shots are always beautiful.
Are those always drone shots, like the big landscape ones?
Yeah,
That
the one that consistently uses it the most is Sicario, the first Sicario.
Yeah.
It just consistently does these large open expanses of, hundreds of miles, and then they zoom into a particular shot. But in each of his films, he uses those sort of, he tries to show you the big picture of what's happening. I mean, Arrival, right? Those big pictures of just the ships.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous, giving you the grandeur of it, and then going as small as obviously Amy Adams' character. I could talk about Denis Villeneuve all day, which I guess we get to with Blade Runner 2049.
Anyway, go on about 2049, man.
I mean, I truly believe it's what Blade Runner was trying to be and just failed at being. I think I already said that in the sense of the visuals, I think, are just to the same high standard. Again, it's communicating so much with every frame, and it is subtle, and the vibrancy of the color, and yet even with the vibrancy of the color, the desolate nature of the future that is envisioned there is the perfect, I think, tension of what Villeneuve is going for, and I think what Ridley Scott was going for in the original one. And it's interesting that at this point in history, so much further down, we even see sort of, obviously we're not, I think the original one is actually set in 2019, wasn't it? Or somewhere around now?
Yeah, November 2019.
Yeah, the first one was exactly 2019, because that was the first film that we reviewed in 2019.
Yeah, so obviously we're not there yet to how that was, but I think we can see
cars,
shades
God damn it.
of some of the thing. I know, they're never going to happen.
I know. Come on, I'll take a jetpack.
First
That's
Back
like a
to the Future, and now Blade Runner 2049 failing us. But I think that's great. But then I think where 2049 excels, where the original one doesn't, is with the purpose of the plot and the characters involved in that and their actual arcs and having some sort of emotion involved in that. And I don't mean emotions simply as human emotion, because I can already hear people who like the original Blade Runner saying that's the point because they're replicants.
Fair enough.
That's against the point, because the whole question is, what is humanity? What's it worth, and how should it exist with potentially other intelligence or intelligences? And so I think this does such a better job. I mean, to be honest, I think Batista's character, who I'm forgetting his name,
Is that Leto?
Sapper Morton.
Oh, no, Batista. Sorry, yeah.
I think his name's Sapper, which I only know because I read the Wikipedia plot recently. But his character, I think, has more emotion and more depth than anyone in the original one. Just the way that it's presented and the acting that Batista does, showing the pain of this existence that he wants to be real but isn't. But he's acting like it is real, and I think that's ultimately
that's the guy who's shot. He's doing the farm work, and he's the first guy killed, kind of in the opening scene there.
I think that loss, him getting shot, and the tension of he's shot by our main character, I think is a bigger emotional journey than anything I went on in the original Blade Runner. Huh. And I think from there it just escalates in this quest of K that you think is so personal and ends up being not personal at all. Sorry, are we allowed to give spoilers? I forget.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely.
We're expecting people to see it. So the fact that the whole plot drives towards the fact that K is this replicant who actually comes from natural reproduction, and then the fact that it isn't.
Right.
And yet it's still something worth fighting for, and the story is larger than himself. That last scene of him dying to sort of fulfill this. All of these layers are so much more powerful and hits harder for me on the questions, the larger philosophical questions than the first one did. Right. I loved it.
I think that you're totally right in that sense. I completely agree that it really brilliantly makes this point of wanting to be more, wanting to not just be a machine. So they put him in this position where he gets to believe it, even though it isn't true. And partially because he wants to believe it, and partially because there's all this circumstantial evidence to make him think that's the case. So it becomes a real dramatic point to have him realize that he's not. And then
the only person that says he's not is the one person in the sewer, right? That's the only person.
It all fits together in terms of like her saying that yes, this memory occurred, but that it didn't occur to him necessarily. It just all fits together that he was part of the subterfuge in terms of masking her and hiding her.
Yeah. Okay.
But that he wasn't the child that was born. It was the girl with the who may or may not have immune problems.
I have a lot of questions. Let's do. I want to hear what TC has to say. TC's quiet over there.
Let's all.
Oh no, you're good, dude. I barely remembered the movie. So
TC, better or worse than the first one?
I didn't really know what the story was, but I was reading the synopsis to figure it out. So looked cool though. I don't know.
How do you compare it to the original Blade Runner in terms of its looks?
Well, I noticed the score this time, Denny. Didn't notice it last time. I'll tell you that much. A lot of motorcycle sounds in there.
Thanks, Hans.
Yeah,
that's a Denny. That's a Villeneuve thing, or whatever his name is. Denny V. Denny. Can we just call him Denny?
Denny V. We call him Denny V.
Denny.
I'm pretty sure it's Villeneuve.
It's Villeneuve.
We can just go Denny.
Villeneuve.
It's Villeneuve.
We just make noise because Denny just always makes noise every time he says
if you listen to a commentary with him, he goes, "Hello, this is Denis Villeneuve."
Villeneuve. Yeah.
I don't know how French works, but that's how he says it.
I don't know how French works, but it sounds weird, though. Yeah. I'll tell you that much.
It doesn't make sense to me, but that's what he said. So
that seems to be a trademark of him too, because certainly Arrival and another his films do this kind of like there's like these menacing sounds.
Well, there's actually this movie. He has the same Johan Johansson, one of the two, Johan Johansson. Does most of his movie scores, but he actually kicked him off this movie because he wanted it to be different, so they got Hans Zimmer.
He wanted it to be more like Vangelis, or however you say it.
For the original one.
I was reading up on that was sort of like they just weren't. He wasn't able to. He's like, I guess John. So how about more motorcycle sounds? Like, wait, man, JJ, I know, I love you, man, but we got it.
If we could keep the Brahms out of there, that'd be good. He's like, no, dude, we need him. We need him. We definitely need him.
TC, could you follow the movie?
I don't know. I mean, I'm seriously considering the fact that I just don't like movies. The more we go into this project, like the more we watch movies, the less I watch them while I watch them.
I love it.
Like it's seriously
great. I think that's great, TC. It adds a really nice tortured subplot to our weekly podcast.
I've sat there and I watched through this and I didn't even move. I watched the whole thing and then I got to it and I'm like, what the fuck was that movie about? And I realized it was because I was probably sitting there like thinking about 8,000 other things and not paying attention. And then like something would happen. I'd be like, oh, that looks cool. And then I'd probably be back to being anxious about something else and like not paying attention.
Oh man.
I'm much more suited for television. Give me an hour. That's about all the attention span I got.
Right.
3 hours or 2:45. It was a slow
was long.
movie. It's a long movie.
Yeah.
Slow and Long is the name.
Oh, Ridley Scott thought it was way too long too. I have a later on. There's this great interview with him. I'll quote from that's really
It's funny.
funny.
It's funny too because every time, like when they're like, "Oh, what are you watching this week?" and people ask me, I'm like, "Oh, 2049." And they're just like, "Dude, 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'm not watching that." I was like, "I know."
Sure.
But did you see Travelers? Did you see Travelers? No, Travelers was sick. And it's like, oh yeah, we're back to talking about TV. I have no attention span for these types of things, but it did look pretty. I guess I don't know. I honestly don't remember what the fucking movie was about. I was reading the synopsis and I was like, oh.
I loved it for this, but it certainly did take its time. I mean, it let you sit there and absorb the scenery, and that's fine.
I feel like if I need to be in a movie theater for this kind.
Yeah, that would be fair.
It helps.
So that it helps. So that I'm not like distracted by 5,000 other things in my room.
There was a 3D version of this too, which might have been interesting to see.
Only in
I wonder what that would have been.
Only not in the United States.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, foreign 3D for some reason. That's strange.
Gosling's always good. So I mean, there's
Gosling's
that.
the man.
He's always good.
Yeah. TCL agree with you though, man.
Right,
I really concentrate when I watch these movies, and I have the same problem with the original Blade Runner, where I've seen this one, 2049, 4 times now. I have so many goddamn questions for you guys on this movie, and I don't know if I'm retarded or not, or I don't know if I'm physically able or not.
That may be a separate question.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other podcast.
But I don't think so, because I follow other movies, and TC, you follow other movies, and I find myself, even though I really like this movie, I struggle against boredom because it's really slow. And
it's really slow.
And the combination of it being slow and it's confusing because it's really dense too in some ways, where like maybe it just doesn't give you enough. I don't know. I come out of them confused, maybe because I stopped paying attention at certain points, but this time I watched it really intently, and I still have questions. I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't feel as bad.
No, I think this one, and I do think there's more open-ended stuff that's just allowed to be open-ended, and even more so. I don't think. I think from what I could read about it, they wanted there to be a bit more ambiguity. I think with the original Blade Runner, there was ambiguity, but not because that's what Ridley Scott wanted. Ridley Scott actually had some very firm ideas.
Deckard is a replicant.
Deckard is a replicant, and this is how it ends. And I think that also Scott, again, there's this interview with him where he says he basically lays out what he thinks happened. And he has, even when in terms of how he wanted this film to go, he had some firm ideas of exactly what the story was. But I think that they tried to adopt more ambiguity here. And there's, I don't know, I think it is, I like how it's paced in some ways, but I do feel like it's just really a more like, it's very thought-provoking and slow. And I think in a good way, but it can be hard to watch because there's a lot of ambiguity. But yeah, TC, you got any other thoughts on the film? And then Denny or I could go.
No, go ahead.
All right, I'll go.
I just hate movies. Go, Denny.
This movie, I'll say, like, this movie makes me like the original better, and the original makes me like this one better. I think they play off each other really well for some reason. Like, the world it builds seems to grow larger than 2 times the size of either of the 2 movies, just because they both exist, and they're both so almost equal in quality on all planes, except for, I'll agree with you, the acting in this one is, like, so much better. Like, Oscar-worthy acting in this movie. The acting in the first one is kind of like stone people talking. There's nothing there.
Stone people.
I mean, I think that the love character in this movie should have got an Oscar nomination. She was fucking incredible. Whoa.
Oh, what was that?
What's that?
Yeah, sorry about that. That's the bachelor watching party happening down the hallway.
Hey.
When I emailed him, he was still on for night, and he was like, "Yeah, it cuts into my bachelor watching time." I thought he was making a terrible joke.
Oh no, they're watching without him. They didn't even wait.
You gotta TiVo that shit.
The big thing this season is there's a girl who is faking an Australian accent to try to gain attention. So
Ooh.
Scandalous.
That is scandalous. See, already more fun than fucking Blade Runner, original theatrical version at least.
Yes.
I considered mates coming on and doing an Australian accent just to kind of,
Be relevant?
Not bad. That's not bad.
Oh God, that's better than any accent we've ever attempted
Yeah,
in
right.
our last 2
Yeah,
years. of doing
that's
this.
Denny's, right. There you go.
Yeah, crikey.
Oi.
That's fine.
That's all I got.
I only know one word in Australian.
Yeah.
mate. All right, anyway, keep
mates.
going. Sorry.
Yeah, the acting is so much better. And I don't think all of the characters are sexualized in the new one. Like the doctor, dream doctor person is not sexualized at all. So she's like the only real person. And I guess Jenny from, what's her name? Jenny from Forrest Gump.
The block.
Robin Wright. She's not sexualized either, even though she does solicit sex from Kay.
Right.
So that's kind of a flip thing. And then Ryan Gosling is like a sex symbol. So there's kind of flips it.
Well, I mean, how would you not? Yeah, it's the guys. You're in
It's
a
the
room
guys.
with him having
and
a
they
drink.
put him in one of
What do you
those
do?
collar jackets. I mean, come on, who's going to resist
Yeah,
that?
no kidding.
Yeah, but I think that some of the parts of the original Blade Runner that are better are the soundtrack. I think the soundtrack is a little bit better in the original one. And I think the special effects are better in the original one.
Oh,
The CG is visible
Controversy.
sometimes in this new one. And I really don't like it. I wish I couldn't notice it.
I think in this one, I mean, Ridley, we talked about this in the episode last week, that they used a lot of fog and rain to basically obscure the low quality of the production.
Yeah.
And I think it helped. I think in this one they're letting you see everything, and then because of that, it's sort of you can see everything, and you can see a little bit less realism because of it.
And they do have huge sets. They have a lot of practical effects, but there are just like some parts that are glaringly CG, and being so comfortable, like watching Blade Runner like 10 or 15 times or whatever. I'm so used to that world just feeling real and forgetting how used to other movies I am, where you just kind of like Marvel movies where you just accept CG.
Right. Oh yeah, it's CG.
And you're like, that's CG,
right.
that's what it is, fine. But like this type of movie, any type of breaking of that wall, it's just like, oh, this world doesn't exist. Fuck. And I'm out.
I'm sort of the opposite. I think the fog and sort of the distortion in the first one, I think, is overused to the effect where sometimes I'm just like, what the hell is going on? I think of I joked about it earlier, but like that they say enhance about 1 billion times and very slow computers. I think that did not sort of age well, especially since it's supposed to be sort of 24:9, which of course is unfair because they made it in 82. But I think that takes me more out of it, especially I think of the long sequences of enhancing and the detective work he does, which always makes me kind of roll my in the original one.
We're talking about the original. Okay.
The original where he's doing that whole image filter scene.
That happens in
which
this one
takes a
too
long
when he has
time.
the drone.
Yeah.
It's like the same exact
Well,
thing.
yeah. I think it's like an homage almost. It
Yeah.
seems like when he's doing that. Yeah.
But I think they also did it better. And so even just comparing those two scenes for me, the 2049 took it out of me less than the other one did.
That scene was by far the most CG heavy too. When that drone was flying next to the train, that was probably the worst looking scene in the movie in terms of like CG realisticness.
Yeah, you could tell it was CG.
Yeah.
For sure. But I don't know. For me, the effects in this new one I thought was better. Specifically, the large hologram, I think, was a pretty impressive feat of computer generated imaging.
That wasn't computer generated.
Obviously,
That
that's
was
what it
a
was,
real.
but I thought it was very good.
That was a real ballerina they filmed.
Oh, you mean that one?
You're talking
Or-
about the giant ballerina, right? Or are you talking about which one are you talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
Yeah. The one who's just standing. But I guess it's an actress. But I mean, like the way that they
The
made
way
her.
they integrated it. Yeah.
Right, but that's not CG though. That's the point, right? Like they're actually using just like two different actual people. Like they're doing like
No, but they're still projecting it in through CG, right? I mean, that's
Kind of,
even
but-
though it's a real people, it's still like some kind of projection thing. It's like overlaying, right?
yeah, but that's not. I guess CG to me is kind of like you create it in the computer. That might be
Oh,
wrong,
I see.
but
Well, it's a special effect that's computer, like the footage may be real, but you're still like doing some kind of like computer generated way of like integrating two different sets of footage.
yeah.
So, I mean, I thought the nightclub or when they're in the scene with the Elvis impersonator, I love that sequence, that action
Yeah,
sequence
that
when
was
they're.
cool.
I thought that was so cool.
The sound in that scene was great when it cut out and just like echoed.
That was really cool.
I'll
And
give you that one.
I really like the way they did that. I like the way they just sort of managed that fight, that whole sort of action sequence in there where it was cutting in and out with Elvis, and giving rise to some good Harrison Ford quips.
Yes. Old Harrison Ford looking like it hurts to walk. Kind of sad.
Yeah. Oh.
Probably
Yeah.
does.
By Harrison Ford.
That's a good one. That's
Close.
Well done. Yeah. Harrison?
I wonder how empty his bar is if he just drinks all by himself all the time.
I don't know. There's probably lots around.
He has all of Vegas, so he's got a lot of alcohol.
Oh, yeah, it's true. We can just hop
Johnny
hotels.
Walker had like a special bottle, a limited release. That bottle that he pours from, they actually released that for a while. You could get like this futuristic Johnny Walker.
How expensive was it?
I have no idea.
Probably pricey.
But there was a blade. It was designed with the director too. He helped out.
That's kind of sweet.
That is some subtle marketing right there.
As opposed to the giant Atari symbol on the building as they fly by.
Yeah. Did you guys talk about the Blade Runner curse, by the way, when you talked about the original one?
No, but I heard about like all the logos, like they suffered a downturn, like Atari and
Pan Am.
a number of other logos that were shown were either like dead or.
It's something crazy. Like 6 out of the 8 logos that are explicitly referenced have been bankrupt or bought by other companies or went through a massive downturn around the turn of the century. It's pretty. If you look up some of the think pieces, it's pretty fun.
Huh.
I think the only one that didn't have that
Coca-Cola.
like Coca-Cola, but I think they still had like a minor down.
They had a downturn, but they came back.
It's pretty interesting if you ever find one of those. It's on Variety or Vox or one of those.
Huh.
It's pretty interesting.
The Blade Runner Johnny Walker will set you like a used. When you buy a used bottle of alcohol,
Bottle of alcohol?
on eBay,
Pass.
would be
That doesn't seem right.
I don't know what that gets you.
It's the worst idea ever.
Oh yeah. Don't worry about it. It's safe.
I'm seeing it for $200, maybe.
That's not bad for a prop that wasn't in the movie. That's kind of bad, actually.
I'm seeing it Total Wine and More. I'm seeing it here for $90 at Total Wine.
I don't trust
Maybe
those people.
used. Maybe used means it's not open, but the box has been like
right, I would
given
guess.
to somebody.
It just still
right.
seems like
it's sealed.
Took a
but-
couple of nips, you
Right.
know.
Like it
just,
already got to someone's house as a gift. and then now
I
it's
tell
getting
you, it's
sold.
good. You don't even need to know if it's good or not. I'll tell you, it's good because I had some.
Yeah. They just get a half a bottle of fucking liquor delivered to your door. What? It came in 2 days. Fuck you.
What else you got, Danny?
John, I don't know.
Me?
I got other thoughts that'll come up in the questions, but I mean, I'm sounding negative. I love this movie. I'll watch it a bunch more times.
I like the idea of how the movies complement each other. I think that's really, really well said. I like that a lot because I think that Blade Runner was kind of an accident and it was a mess and people were fighting throughout the film. The main star and the director were completely at odds with each other. Budget was all shot all to hell and kept getting cut. And I think there's a story behind the original Blade Runner, which I think is really fascinating and impressive for it to be what it is, despite all the things that were happening. And so that film, I love it. It's like, I don't know, it's like a bunch of, you wouldn't say they're not talented or whatever, but you think of like a band just on the edge and everybody's about to be, to just go nuts. And yet they still put out something really fascinating and impactful. I feel like with what the second Blade Runner is these are the professionals now, and they go, yeah, that was really good. We all have our shit together. None of us are like completely like whacked out on crack or whatever. So we're gonna do this right.
Crack. So what are you saying? The original Blade Runner cast is
No.
cracked
Cracked
out?
out?
Crack?
Just coked out.
No, it's
It's a bit of a
like,
reach.
Yeah, no, it wasn't happening. I'm just speaking figuratively. So I think that there's that sense of the two. Like certainly the second one is far more polished in terms of the actors and the dialogue and a lot of that. But I like the contrast between the two a great deal. And I really do think they complement each other. I think there's some great just individual characters. I think one of my favorite things possibly about this one is each of those characters are really fleshed out and have really interesting stories all by themselves. Every single one of the main ones, like even not Kay's like AI assistant who wants to be a real girl,
Joy.
and just sort of her. It's such a great idea of taking like even more of an extreme approach to something that's synthetic wanting to be human. So you have it even more artificial construct than say a replicant. So it like takes like this idea even further back, which I think is really cool. I thought Robin Wright's character was really good. I thought she was a really fascinating character too, and really well done. She was complex and she was stern, but she also had some feelings for Kay. And I liked her scene where she faces her own death Not that it was great that she died, but I just thought that scene was really well done, and it shows the strength of her character for knowing what's coming and how she faces it. I thought that was really cool. I think what's her name? The bad girl. Love. Thank you. I thought she was also just fascinating with her own story, and she had her own conflicts. And yet she was a real badass, and enjoyed that she was a badass, and yet really wanted to please her, the main guy, the
Wallace?
main bad guy, Wallace. No, I have no names. I just call
I'm
them.
just saying the names as
Yeah.
you talk about them. Go ahead.
Just say creepy AF Jared Leto.
Yeah, no kidding.
Blind
Seriously.
Leto.
And Leto's character himself was also really interesting, and that's one thing about this movie that upon rewatching it really impressed me was I thought each of these characters had substantial parts, and they were all pretty damn interesting. I thought, and I thought Harrison Ford is so good in this. I think, even in comparison, much better, say, in comparison than his Star Wars, where he's just like doing some quips, and then being killed. Here he really is.
Spoilers
emoting
for
and
Star
acting,
Wars.
and-
Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Just throwing other movie
so
spoilers
there.
out in the middle of this. Good job.
But really playing this sort of like, the weary character who still is trying to hide his feelings and concern for his own daughter that he never got to meet. I thought that was also really well played. I do feel like Gosling was a little more removed than I would have liked. Even so, he still seemed a little too remote. And I, if I were to criticize any of the characters, it would be that it seemed like he was even more remote than I think.
John, I think, can I counter that real quick?
Go ahead. Counter
I
away.
feel, because I would agree, but I think it's part of his character because he falls into his role. Like he's so much of a lapdog that he knows he's a replicant, and therefore he doesn't I don't think he thinks there's any reason for him to show emotion. And the scene where he has like the big outburst is when he realizes he's human, and he like
I guess
freaks out.
that's fair. That's fair. So it leads up to that, like so that's his Oscar moment right there, right?
The Oscar reel of just Gosling going fuck,
Spitting.
Yeah. But I really liked sort of the way, and maybe this is the kind of part of the director's style, is just giving so much attention and care to each of these characters, and I just love that. The movie was slow though, and at the same time, can I get to read Ridley Scott's talk about this now?
Oh, how he said he would have cut a half an hour out.
Oh well, but
That'd have been nice.
Says it is actually pretty cool. So he did this.
Done that.
So this was an interview he did with Vulture in December of 2017. This is when he was. They were talking to him mostly about All the Money in the World, which was the Kevin Spacey movie where Kevin Spacey had to be removed because of what he was accused
Kevin
of.
Spacey-ness.
Yeah,
Yeah, all this,
yeah.
you know that
That's
stuff.
gonna be
That spaciness stuff.
Yeah. But anyway, so they were like, they asked him, this was an article by Kyle Buchanan, and they asked him, so what did you make of the way Blade Runner 2049 was received? And it says, whispers, he says, I have to be careful what I say. It was fucking way too long. Fuck me, and most of that script's mine. Ridley Scott, by the way, is 80 years old at this point.
Shit. So that's a
Yeah,
different
maybe it's
interview.
just
He says
getting
that multiple
slow.
times, John.
Yeah. Oh, I know, but this is, so they say, really? And he says, yes. And then they say, the story of the script. And he said, I sat with writers for an inordinate amount of time, and I will not take credit because it means I've got to sit there with a tape recorder while we talk. I can't do that to a good writer, but I have to, because to prove I'm part of the actual process, I have to then have an endless amount of proof, and I can't be bothered. But then this is where Scott also talks about what his idea for Blade Runner for the sequel was. He says, the big idea comes from Blade Runner. Tyrell is a trillionaire. Maybe 5 to 10% of his business is AI, and like God, he has created the perfect beings that for all intents and purposes, there's no telling the difference from humans. But then he says, you know what? I'm going to create an AI, and I'll have a male and female, and they will not know that they're both AIs, and I'll have them meet each other, and they will fall in love, and they will consummate, and they will have a child. So this was Scott's vision for this film, that both Deckard and Rachel are replicants. Tyrell intended for them to meet, intended for them to have a child. That the whole plot of the original Blade Runner was something that was devised by Tyrell.
That's in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not for sure. You still don't even know that Harrison Ford's a replicant. And
Oh, you know. He's definitely
the director of this film says he wants to leave it. The director of 2049 wants to leave it an open question and said that explicitly. And
but we're
there's
taking the final cut as canon,
right.
aren't we? Can we say
we
that?
Should, but then
I was going to say I didn't know he was a replicant.
Well, there's no reason he's not, because at the end of the final cut, they tell you he's a replicant.
So this will probably start getting into your questions, Denny, I think. And I think I've said everything I wanted to say about the movie. So if we want to go to other stuff, we can start doing that.
Okay. So do we want to do questions first? Because this will lead to a lot of conversation about the plot of the movie, I think.
That's fair. I have questions too, but I tried to look them up, and oftentimes it seemed the answer to the question was like, yeah, it could be that or the other thing.
Okay. So these will go pretty I derived these from my notes. So these should be pretty linear in terms of the plot. Some of them are stupid.
Did you take notes while watching the movie?
I always do.
He always does.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how he does it. But then again, I don't remember the movies and I watch them. So, I mean, I don't know which is worse.
Denny has a note. Do you still have your note-taking system?
I have a tablet now, so I don't waste paper.
Okay, but I thought you had like a whole way of like identifying your notes as.
Oh, I do. I have little question marks. I have little asterisks. I have lots of things going on.
He's got code.
I got code.
He's a replicant.
Denny code.
That's what we figured out.
Yeah.
It's
pretty useful sometimes. And then sometimes I don't organize them before an episode, and there's a lot of dead air. Yeah. But I organize them this time. So these will vary, these questions, and you'll see why. Why didn't he have a backup for the Emanator? No Cloud?
What?
He steps in the Emanator. Joy dies.
The Emanator.
Oh,
it's the little iPod thing.
Because he has to remove her from even if there was a cloud, he has to remove her from the system so that nobody can access her.
What about a backup Emanator? It's his freaking girlfriend he's talking about here.
It was like I guess he could stash it somewhere, but he barely. That was what he got for the birthday present. Apparently, those things are very expensive.
Oh, that little wand thing.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah. So he had to remove her from any public or any sort of like cloud access because they would get her and interrogate her.
Yeah, I just think you should back her up. Come on, you gotta back her up.
But he did. But that's costly. Like, so he only had the one system to back her up, and that's what he got her for. That was like this huge special present he got her.
What about button up in his jacket? He should button up his jacket pocket. How about that?
Do something.
Right, we'll go with that.
Protect it a little bit better.
But of course, you don't want it. But it's another critical portion of the movie that she's destroyed, and that he watches that, and it's taken away from him. I mean, that's another scene that sort of, you kind of think it just has to happen with the way this all plays out.
Yeah. That was a dumb one. Here's a good one. Why did Tyrell put the idea of souls as being the separator of replicants and humans if he was planning on breeding the replicants?
Wait, Tyrell is the one that specified souls are the difference?
I think so, right? Because like that's what all the replicants think, and he was the father of all replicants.
All you hear is there's this one conversation between his chief and Gosling. By the way, Robin Wright is also the female lead in Princess Bride, which is interesting.
Buttercup,
but anyway,
Buttercup.
Yeah, she is Buttercup, which is, I don't know. It's amazing how tough she is in this film. So anyway, so they have this
Andy,
conversation.
interrupt John whenever you want. Just
oh
do
yeah,
it.
sorry, I can just talk.
Just throw another there, but John, go ahead.
Yeah.
I have that card. I'm ready to use it.
Okay,
go. Okay, good. But they have this conversation, right, which brings us up, and he says, he wasn't born, so he doesn't have a soul. And then Wright's character is like, well, that served you well up to this point. I think it's a very strange idea. But this might be, depending on if you're a religious person or not, to think that a soul is something you get because you're born.
Well, that's something that came from, either way, whatever you think where it should come from, it came from Kay's mind.
Right. Well, but it wasn't, or it just came from not necessarily Kay's mind, but maybe that's just the general thought at the time that replicants don't have souls, and maybe the reason they don't have souls is because they're not born.
Don't you think the way he delivered it made it sound like it was coming from the way he felt about it?
Yeah, but it doesn't really make much sense to think that if for some reason if souls do exist, which is a separate conversation, but why, if you're an artificial construct, even if your artificial construct can replicate itself through birth, that wouldn't mean you'd get a soul.
I don't know. I think so, John.
Sense.
I mean, in general, yes, but the way this plot, and Andy, let me know if I'm way off on this, but the way this goes is the entire tension of Jenny's character is that if the replicants know that they can give birth, they will all have the idea that they can create souls, and that will start a war because they feel like they're equal.
I didn't think that. I mean, that's an interesting point. I thought it was more just about like they do not have to rely on anybody to make themselves.
I'm gonna interrupt John here.
Yeah. Okay. Play it.
So I think both you guys are correct. I think you're conflating what I would say are two separate points of the movie. I think first, when we talk about souls, I think sort of the broadest possible definition is a soul is what distinguishes like the value of human life from the value of other life. I think generally, sort of philosophically, I think that's the easiest thing we can say on that. Like, an evolved sense of our communal self, whatever it might be. But I think that's sort of the name we give to souls. And I think the idea that the humans are dealing with is that's what makes them able to do whatever they want to the replicants, right? And so that's why Wallace is able to shoot Rachel, and it's not a big deal at in that temptation scene. I think from the replicants' point of view, they are, I think, John, I'm with you, purely on the idea of survival. If they can survive without the humans, they are obviously superior to humans in their capacity for intelligence and their like physical capabilities. And so if they no longer rely on humans for their existence, they can kill them. So I think it's an interesting tension between those two groups of people where humanity values itself because of what we view ourselves to be, i.e. we have souls, we are valuable in that sense, more valuable than intelligence even on its own. And yet, from the replicants' point of view, they are intelligent that can simply survive on its own. And so in the world that it's created, I think it's that tension between intelligence and sort of this undefinable humanity or undefinable soulness. And that's the tension. And I think the interesting thing for the viewer, because we don't live yet in that world where there are fully formed, solely intelligent beings without sort of humanity, whatever that nebulously means. I think the idea is, what if there was? So that's why I think the question, "What is humanity?" is the overarching question in all of this, because that's what's sort of centered on the tension of that plot. Sorry, I went a lot of different places.
No, I got a question on one of the things you said. It sounded like you were equating the replicants figuring out that they could give birth to them realizing that they didn't need the humans. And I'm wondering how one leads to the other in that.
Well, because then they don't need a maker anymore.
Why do they need a maker anyway? Even if they didn't,
somebody has to build them.
Yeah, but the individual person doesn't need anything else from the humans.
Mm-hmm. No, but they
want to continue their race.
Somehow,
I guess
you have to continue your race. You have to somehow be able to like get more people.
But it's not just your soul survival, but the survival of your sort of class and race.
But,
makes sense.
But to some extent, we do, even though we don't necessarily face this with technology, we do this anyway because we dehumanize people one way or another. In terms of that's kind of some of the thinking behind racism and other things like that, where you think of these people as lesser. Somehow they're not worthy as being treated as equal. They're like, it's okay to make them slaves, for example, that's the idea of the replicants. It's okay for them to be slaves because they're machines. But we also, not on technology basis, but on other sort of ambiguous metrics, we decide that people are slave worthy. And so we make those distinctions all the time. And you can argue even, we make those distinctions between humans and animals. And we make these distinctions that there are certain rights and privileges that you allow a human. And you even get into this debate in terms of the course of life with abortion, in terms of when do you decide that somebody actually has those rights. And that's certainly a sensitive issue and one that's not easily resolvable. So it's something, even aside from the AI stuff, it's something that we sort of like, it's this gray area that we face in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Other questions. That was good. I like that. Where was Gaff? Where did they find Gaff?
Which one's Gaff?
Gaff is the guy that had the cane from the first Blade Runner, who is now old.
Oh, he's in like an old retirement home or something that looked like.
How did Kay find him?
He just sort of shows. Is there any kind of like breadcrumbs that lead him to him?
So the scene before that is when, I think it's when Kay goes to the record keeping thing with Love, and they look at the ball that spins and it has an old recording. Rachel and Deckard. And then he arrives at Gaff's retirement home.
Right. Maybe you could guess that they over, it would make more sense if somehow in that recording he overheard Gaff or something.
Gaff wasn't in the room during that.
I know. I'm just saying, like, but yeah, it's a good point. I mean, you could just sort of, I guess you could fill in the gaps and think that Kay was just like then started to research Deckard and realized that there was this other guy that sort of hung out with him.
That's true.
And then went to visit him. I mean,
Well,
I think that's what I did in my
records-
own head.
Wasn't that part of the thing where like the blackout took out all the records except for this thing that you were listening to?
Or most of them, but you could think, I mean, it didn't bother me because I was just thinking, I just probably like somehow looked up more about Deckard now and then found out that there was this guy and then went and found this guy. But yeah.
Yeah. That's not an answer.
I know.
You got anything, Andy, or no? Does that one just
I don't really have anything.
Okay.
No.
So Gaff also says
But
he changed.
great to see James Edward Olmos again, though. I like that because he was such a stylish character in the first one. It was neat that they just brought him back and let him do one little origami animal.
He changes canon, by the way. And I had a question about this last week for you guys.
Who
How we
changes canon?
Kind of. So like I brought up the question last week where we can see the replicants have red eyes, right? That's a thing in the first Blade Runner.
And if you will recall from last week, I know it's been a long time, but I disagreed with you.
Well, you're wrong because it shows you, and there's like proof. And there's one hidden scene where you can see Deckard's eyes, and it only happens in replicants' eyes. And it's the thing they did specifically to show that which were replicants, right?
Well,
and in the first Blade Runner, it happens, and you can see it, but nobody in the movie knows that that's a thing. But
right,
in
so
this
which is
one,
hard to believe. That I mean, if that was the case, then you wouldn't need the whole void comp thing. You could just shine a flashlight in their eyes. So that's really hard too.
In this one, Gaff says something like Deckard. He like indicates that Deckard is dead, and he also says something about his eyes gave it away. It's like a quote that Gaff says, indicating that they found out he was a replicant.
Denny, that you're hanging on to.
Why else would he say his eyes gave it away? That's obviously referencing the red eyes from the original one. What else would it be referencing?
Don't know.
Don't know. Okay, skip that one.
I think it's fair.
I'm keeping that.
It's a fair continuation of your pet theory.
Yes. I want to hear, Andy, what are your thoughts on what Wallace's neck chips do? What are those things?
Wallace's neck chips.
He has like little mahjong pieces he sticks into his neck.
Oh, that's what enables him
so you
to
can
see.
like change the wasn't it like a language thing for one?
Oh.
Was it language?
I thought that's what enables all the little drones.
But why are there different ones?
I took it just as like different programs. For some reason, he can't keep it in the same. I don't really. I sort of like a matrix thing, like different uses for different things. That's kind of
like floppy disks.
That's kind of a guess, but exactly.
Why does love cry when the slimy replicant is being born?
Which one cries?
The badass woman replicant with like the bangs.
Does she cries when she's being born?
She's crying. Her face, she's not like bawling, but like tears are coming. They cuts to her and tears are coming out of her eyes.
Yeah, well, she has tears too when she's fighting Kay.
That's another one of my questions.
Later, yes.
Why is she crying like that?
She does the tear thing. She's got conflicting emotions. I don't know.
What are her emotions?
So
humor me, damn it.
I'm trying to work with you, Denny. Just be a little less demanding and it'd be a lot easier.
Never.
Seriously.
Never.
Let's see. I don't know. What do you got, Andy?
I mean, I think the interesting thing about love is that she is sort of again, this question of what is humanity is played out through her as someone who's generally would just be like a regular sort of muscle character, which she is at some points. But in those moments where we see her emotion, we see sort of more humanity in she's understanding the action she's doing and some of the actions that Kay is doing. And so I think it's just that same tension sort of writ small in love, recognizing the importance of if replicants can reproduce versus, she has to listen to and she wants to please this master. That would be my sort of important or not important. Like, if I'm trying to philosophize about why that's in there.
My guess is that she's afraid she's going to be replaced. That's my guess.
She wants to be like, she lives in more of like a fear and she wants to be the best.
Yes.
Like she also has this very competitive thing about her, but maybe part of it is that if she feels like she's the best, she won't be destroyed.
Loved. Right.
Because her master just shows this like definite willfulness of just killing off anybody who vaguely displeases him.
Yeah. And doesn't he say something like, this is the newest model? It's the best one or something like that?
Yeah. And then he stabs
And he
her.
guts her.
Because I guess I tried to look it up to see if there was what the exact reason was, and maybe it was because he was trying to create a replicant that would be fertile, and she wasn't, and so she gets the knife.
Yeah, it was just to represent like he could kill hundreds and it wouldn't matter because he needs like trillions or whatever, right? He needs a lot more than he has.
But I don't know about this whole birth thing. I mean, that takes forever. Like if you have it, then you got to wait 20 years for them to mature. I mean, it just seems like you'd wonder if it's necessarily that much better. Again, you don't really know how much it costs to make each replicant and how that happens. But the idea of self-replication, if they're making babies, you still have to wait for them to grow up then, which you don't have to wait if you just...
I think he does say specifically it's for galactic colonization, right? So like the idea that like they'll send a male and a female to,
I see.
I don't know, Venus or something. And then
And
in
then
like
they're
50 years, then they can build a colony and they don't have to send 50 replicants through space. I think that's the idea.
Good point. Good point. That makes sense.
And he's a futurist. He's thinking way ahead. He wants to own the universe with his name on it. Yeah. Even though he'll be dead, he'll be the name of the entire universe. Not bad. Was Rachel the only Nexus 6 that could procreate?
Good question. No idea. I don't know. How come if Harrison Ford was also a replicant, how did he age? Why did he not have the limited lifespan of the other Nexus 6s?
Well, Rachel didn't either, right?
No, well, so it's weird that they say she died in childbirth. It would have been more poignant, I think, if she would have just died because her natural lifespan had expired.
The aging of replicants is super inconsistent because in the first one, doesn't that guy like die of old age like very nicely on that rooftop to have that very nice scene?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's not dying. He's dying because his 4 years are up at that point.
We see that replicants' age is programmed. So we could say that maybe, Harrison Ford, if he's a replicant, was programmed to age naturally.
I think that's fair.
It's sort of cheating.
No, well, you could say that because there's the conversation that Roy has with Tyrell in the first one, and I think you could interpret that what Tyrell's saying is, look, once we've set you up, we can't change it. Like once we've like created you and given you your lifespan, we can't do anything about it. You could interpret that conversation as saying that they don't know how to have a longer lifespan, which is what I initially thought that conversation was, meaning that they have no idea how to make replicants that would live longer. But I think you could interpret it more as like Roy wanted more life and Tyrell is saying, no, that's the way you're built, man. There's nothing we can do to change it once you've been built this way.
I think that's right because, I mean, I choose, and this could be totally wrong, I choose to take the theatrical version of the first one as canon at the end where Tyrell says that Rachel wasn't programmed with a 4-year lifespan.
Right.
Which is something they say at the end, but it's not in the final cut.
Right. It's not there, but it's something there that's put in the cheesy ending, make you feel better narration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the prostitute that is the one that's doubled in that weird sex scene.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one who plants the tracker in Kay's backpack, which leads Love to find Deckard.
No, it does not. It leads. This is the resistance. She's part of the resistance movement. It leads the resistance movement to find him.
How did Love find him then?
Love had all kinds of other means at her disposal to find him.
I believe it's the car because he still had his LAPD car.
She was able to like send missiles his way when he was like down there and where the orphanage was. I mean,
that
she
clears up a ton for me. Thank you.
Good tabs on him.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense because I was like, wait a minute.
But I totally was confused because I was asking that same thing. It's like how come she's like looking for him when she has a tracking device? And because I assumed that the prostitute was like working for her.
So then more questions. So Kay knows that she's following him because she saved him from all those trash bums. Wouldn't he know not to bring his car to the desert casino? Because she'd also be tracking him?
Ryan Gosling has several dumb moments in this.
Yeah,
where
a fair point.
He's not a very good cop.
That's a fair
Same
point.
thing when he goes to San Diego. It's kind of like, how does he not know he's being watched by people?
Right.
There's several times where you're like, you think a replicant cop would know to be a little more careful or to be a little more sneaky, and he just never is.
But he's way off his baseline, man. He's distressed.
You're way off baseline.
Yep.
Someone explained to me the record of there being a boy and a girl and the boy dying, but then the boy never existed. What was the point of all that?
I think it's just more. That's the whole thing of Decker trying to conceal as much as possible.
Just making it messy for them to follow.
Happened. Yep. It's all red herrings. I mean, that's how I read it.
Because that scene where he finds like duplicate DNA strands or something, I didn't understand what that movie was trying to tell me during that part. He's like, they're the exact same. I'm like, I don't get it. Someone explain this to me.
I thought he was the son. He was one of them.
Right, but he was like, he's like, one is a boy, one is a girl, but they're the exact same.
Well, yeah, but he figured he's the boy, so then there's no way that's the girl, right?
Yeah, so he had to think that one of them was fake.
Right. In which he thought he was the son, so therefore, right.
Yeah, but that
how did I pick this up and you didn't pick
I don't know, dude.
Yeah.
I barely watched this movie.
God damn it.
You guys are talking, I'm like, I don't remember that scene.
Nice job, TC.
One for
and
TC.
Then this comes
Good
up,
job,
and I'm
dude.
like, how do you not get that?
I don't know. Shit, now I feel stupid. All right, here's another one. His crash landing brought him suspiciously close to the orphanage. That's not a question. I just wanted to point that out.
That's a fair point.
True. Just an observation.
Yeah, sorry, that wasn't the question part.
No opinion, no question.
Oh, God.
Everything wrong with Blade Runner 2049.
No, was he the first replicant? So you have to assume there's a bunch of replicants with a memory of this horse. He was the first one to get to that orphanage and find the horse?
Well, I don't know if so. I wasn't sure that. I thought that he still was a sort of decoy. So he was given some of these memories
but
because
the
he's
prostitute
a decoy.
has the memory too.
She has the memory of the
she
horse?
Picks up the horse and
does?
she like whispers like it's from a dream. So she at least has the same horse memory, but it's like not as strong for her, I guess, because she's not like, holy shit, this is the dream I have. She was like, it's from a dream.
On that.
Yeah, she whispers it when she's in I think it's in Deckard's casino place. I think maybe. I forget where she says it, but she says it.
Oh, interesting.
I think, because I think the replicants know that their memories are false memories. I think the idea is they all just know that, and they know it's, programmable to make them work better. And so they don't take them seriously. And Kay only takes it seriously because of what he has now found out.
Right.
And he was told that one particular memory was a real memory, which I guess is not the usual kind of memory that they do. Normally it's more fabricated. Although in the first Blade Runner, the memories that the replicants were given were from other people. Like that's how Deckard would tell Rachel. It's like he knew all her memories because it was actually from Tyrell's niece.
Why would they make real memories illegal? What would be the reasoning behind that?
I don't know.
Besides plot point, making it possible for them to know that it was real.
You mean making? Sorry, say that. What was illegal? That them
real
having
memories,
real memories was actually illegal.
Yeah, giving replicants real memories is illegal.
Well, maybe it may make them too human. Like maybe they're too real, and then they get freaked out, and they tend to have more trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take it, I guess.
Why don't you just have look, it's modern technology. Why can't you just have a friggin' kill switch? It's like, oh, a replicant's gone crazy. You just push the button and
that's it. And then they die. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Why would you ever make a replicant that you couldn't easily tell was a replicant?
Right. Or you can easily just shut off if they go haywire. You just
put it
push
on the
a button,
clapper.
you have a kill switch.
It falls over. You're good.
Again, you can go there if you want. That's not as much fun, but certainly there's a lot of sort of points you can make like that, I guess. But
yeah. Andy, I thought this was a relevant question because you were on the Star Wars podcast last. I thought probably the second worst part of this movie to me was the scene with the bad guy from the movie Captain Phillips and the Star Wars style translation that they did in this movie.
Oh, really?
Where one guy was talking one language, one guy was talking another language.
I was just happy to see him again. I love him. He's great.
I think I did mention that on our podcast, right? That everyone's talking to each other in different languages.
Yeah, you did.
Right. Yeah.
And you kind of accept it because it's Star Wars, but then you have this hard sci-fi movie that's trying so hard to be as realistic as possible.
Gosling knows all the languages. He's the replicant. It's easy for him to move back and forth.
But why doesn't he speak in his language?
Because he doesn't have to.
Because he's Ghazi, baby.
Because, I don't know. I'll take that as a win on my part because, yeah.
Is it a win? I don't know. I just like the scene. I was like, hey, it's that guy. He was so great in Captain Phillips. Good to see him again. Glad he's getting more work.
Is that really what you thought?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Blinded by the actor. Jesus.
Yeah.
So they were talking about radiation where Deckard was living. There were bees there? Is there actually radiation there? Was
not
that
anymore?
A front?
Apparently,
not anymore?
They were showing radiation levels nominal or something like that as he was doing the drone flyover. I think at some point where he wasn't showing radiation or at least non-lethal levels of radiation.
So how did he So I thought when I watched it that he was using the radiation levels to find the place that Deckard was hiding. If that wasn't the case, how did he find Deckard's spot on the first go around out of all the places?
Wasn't there like infrared or something? There was some kind of thing he was looking at that was like giving him readings.
I don't know. I thought it wasn't
radiation. Well, there was radiation at one point, but then I think it was another infrared or something that he was looking for.
Or heat or something. There was some sort of scanner that he could see was unusual.
Okay.
But it's not really explained. It's just sort of, Gosling's in the car and it's going to the right place.
Okay. That makes sense. Only a couple more. How does Kay...
Before I forget, I have one confusing point at that point. When Deckard's being interviewed, I thought that meant that...
in Wallace's place?
Yeah, that Wallace had already taken him back to his place because he had the water and everything. So I thought they were already back at the home office with all the water.
He's at the Earth headquarters, which is Wallace's headquarters.
Right.
But you're talking about where they're taking him afterwards?
No, well, that's why I was really confused. That why is Deckard? I thought Deckard already was where he was going to be, and he was going to be tortured there.
No,
why did they need to move him?
They were going to torture him off-world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's illegal on Earth, and so they took him to like where Wallace actually was, and then they were going to take him off.
Kind of a Guantanamo Bay situation.
John,
there.
that leads perfectly to my next question. How did
Okay.
Kay find Deckard's route when they were going to the off-world launch pad or whatever? How?
It's a small world. Yeah, I don't know.
Tiny world.
I mean, again, he might assume maybe he still has some access to police scanners or whatever, and you imagine there's some kind of traffic control for all of these airships. So you could think that there's ways for him to figure out who's coming and going when. You could also think that the resistance movement had this info because they've got spies or whatever, so they know he was being moved.
Okay.
So that they helped him out.
Yeah, okay. I'll buy that. One more question. How does Kay realize the dream doctor is the daughter? Crickets.
It's a good question. I don't know.
Silence.
I forget what Roger Ebert called this. There's like this trope where the only other person left over that hasn't been explained is like the
there's
bad
no other
guy,
humans
right?
in the world except for this one other person. So it has to be her.
Everybody else, we know what their point is except for her, kind of. And so it seems to make sense when he goes to her from the audience's perspective. But I think when you question it directly, I'm like, I'm not sure how he knows.
Well, why would a replicant need to be fucking put behind glass?
Well, because she's got immune disorders.
Yeah,
or
but what kind of
possibly.
replicant has an immune disorder?
Isn't that fake? That's fake, isn't it? To keep her protected.
I imagine it's fake for her protection. That's all
So
part
people
of the
can't
system,
inspect
the
her.
scheme. Yeah. So that's all part of the
Right, no, but logically you'd be like,
subterfuge.
something's up here. No replicant needs to be behind the glass.
Right.
Well, she's not supposed to be a replicant.
But nobody knows she's a replicant except for the secret underground people.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I just figured that's how Kay put two and two together.
Oh, maybe.
Like logically, they're like, why would there be
2 points for TC.
Yeah. Hey, I
Look,
said pay
man.
attention twice this movie.
You are doing good.
We're on
You just-
top
you-
here.
Two and
oh.
was at
Way
hour
too much,
3.
man.
Good job, dude.
Yeah.
I also just wanted to point out real quick that if you look at Kay's jacket at the very end, the pattern in dust on it makes it look like you can see his rib cage, which I think leads you to believe that he's going to die on the staircase.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
I read that.
Death scene. I like.
Oh, you
this,
noticed that
though.
too? The rib cage thing?
Well, I more that I recognize that what they're trying to get across is that he was dying. I do have, by the way, before we get too far, I have the subreddit on Blade Runner that does have an answer to the question: how exactly did Kay know Anna was Deckard's daughter?
Oh, here we go.
Here's what great_red_dragon said, so we know this is legit.
That's
Thank
a
God.
nice tame name for Reddit. But
Yeah.
yes.
Because of the fact that she had a genetic disease, like the corrupted data said, and when he sees the wooden animals carved out of the same wood on the desk at Deckard's casino, he pieces it together when he realizes the memory is hers and not his. So when he finds out it's a daughter, he puts together that it has someone with a disease, which he knows that doctor has, and then because of the wooden figurines.
How do we know there's a genetic disease? When do we know that?
When he's finding out about the DNA strands that are like the same boy and girl, I think in that scene, don't they say something about there being a flaw in the
I
I don't
forget.
remember.
Oh, so she actually does have a genetic disorder.
I think so.
Ah.
That's my
So
understanding.
the replicants
Okay,
can have babies, but they may be quite fragile.
It's inbreeding. It's no good.
Ugh.
Okay, that one makes sense. But then how does Deckard having the wooden animals lead him to think about the daughter?
I don't know. I'm just reading The Great Red Dragon.
Damn it, Great
Oh,
Red
well, thank
Dragon.
God for the Great Red Dragon.
I mean,
you know.
this kind of stuff, I don't know. I feel like you must know a little bit, or not. The people writing it and the people editing it must put these types of things into it to make it more rewatchable. Because if these had answers, then what would be the point? I like watching it to try to figure it out. That's why I watched the first one a bunch of times, but there's
Yeah, it's
probably no
interesting.
answers.
I can't put my finger on it, but I do remember when I was watching it, the same time that he's like, oh, it's the doctor, I also, as the viewer, was thinking, oh, it's the doctor. So I don't know how they got that across, but at least as a viewer, I did put that together in that moment.
Okay. I remember it being very smooth too, but I don't know why.
Yeah, that's interesting. I couldn't tell you either.
Because it's so long and you're just hanging on to your
but
attention
it
span.
goes
by the
back
end.
to the point of, there's this other character where we haven't really realized her full role yet. And so it just fits into place.
Yeah, but that's not how the real world works, though, right?
No, but it's how a movie works. It's part.
No,
it's
Denny, but
often-
funny thing is when they
This
write
is
these
a
movies,
film.
right? Yeah.
They have to pay that
is-
woman. They might as well use her in a couple of
It
scenes.
tends to happen with the bad guy in films. It's like the only remaining guy who backstory hasn't been explained is the bad guy.
That's all I have for questions.
Wow.
That was a lot of questions. Thank you guys for humoring me. I know very little more than I did before I started asking them,
Okay.
but that's
Awesome.
typical.
Do we have a whole extensive trivia section as
There's
well?
not so much trivia in this movie.
Okay. Well, I have one question for you guys then.
Yeah.
That's more of just like a provoked by this movie. If something was created that had emotions and thoughts and feelings that were indistinguishable from a human, should that thing be granted the same rights as a human?
How do you measure indistinguishable from a human? How do you measure feelings?
Let's not say that we have to measure it. Let's just assume that it is indistinguishable.
My brain can't comprehend that hypothetical.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that would depend on the manner of how it was created. Because, I mean, we already have had, for instance, human beings that were created outside the womb that have been able to be sustained and survived. And I think most people call them human. The interesting thing, I guess, is when we talk about human-like things, such as emotions, being in things that are not traditionally, the coming together of a sperm and an egg. Which is hard to even reconcile what that would mean. Yeah, I'm kind of talking out loud because I don't really have a great answer to the question.
You're talking about like a computer program that the only way we'd be able to tell in theory. I mean, the biggest problem with the question I have is that you wouldn't be able to tell. Like you could make it hard enough to distinguish between the two or they're the exact same, but that doesn't mean anything, really.
Yeah. But it's, I mean, you could also make the argument that it's just because, I mean, that what you are yourself, that you assume that the other people around you are just as conscious and aware and emotional and deserving of rights as you are. You don't truly know that.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting question. It seems like it's interesting that the one response is to try to say, well, that's not going to happen, or how would we really know that happens? That's where we tend to go with that question, as opposed to trying to face it head on. But
it's because we can't measure our emotions. So there's no way for us to do that now.
But what if? But the idea of is if it does happen. I mean, I can tilt my hand on this. I think that I think that consciousness is something that just emerges, and it emerges from complexity, and it's a continuous thing. It's on a continuum. It's not something that's either there or not. I think that animals and other life forms actually have some form of it as well, so that it really is just a continuum. It's not just like suddenly you have it and it's a switch. So I think that then any form of consciousness is just as valid as our own, however it is created. And so then following from that, anything that has that level of consciousness should have the same rights and privileges as we do. But that's my own biases. So.
I mean, in theory, I would agree, but I don't know how you'd get there to actually make that call.
So let's say something's artificially made, and you have these replicants saying, "We are human. We deserve the same rights and privileges as you have," and maybe you try to find some kind of test to distinguish. And again, in Philip K. Dick's book, the replicants do not have empathy. That's their sort of like the telltale part that makes them less than human is they can't empathize. That certainly is not the case in the movies at all. In fact, quite the opposite. Sometimes the replicants seem, have more empathetic than the humans are. But so it's just a interesting question. I mean, it's one of my favorite things about how this movie tries to ask some of those questions.
I think mine, I've been quiet for a while to try to formulate my response on this, but I think the sort of where I would go with it is that our humanity is so communally and relationally defined that I think that is sort of the hidden defining quality of this argument. So for example, if all of a sudden my wife came to me, who I've known for the 7 years now, and she told me I'm actually a replicant, or, I was created in a lab or whatever, yep. I would still, because of our relationship, hold her as human. And, she's, for me, the most important person no matter what.
Or if she said, I am an AI construct, I am basically software.
Yeah. Or if she was an alien and she was not human.
So that's a good point. So it's the context in your relationship with her that would lead you to make that call.
Exactly. And we know from history, unfortunately, the opposite extreme, where we've had civilizations that come in contact with other civilizations and they look the exact same. They are clearly in every single way human. And yet, because there is no relational construction and because of power dynamics and a bunch of other things that we unfortunately struggle with as humans, we treat them as less than, even though in every way imaginably measurable, they are the same and just as valuable.
But we don't have that relationship. Wow, that's a really good point.
We haven't handled that. So that's my thoughtful answer there. And I think that's actually the interesting to double down on Blade Runner 2049. I think that's the brilliance of the character work in this one, in the sense that the replicants are the ones that we build the most relationship with in the film. Mm-hmm. And it is the humans that we, someone just said this, that we sort of don't build a relationship with and seem the most inhuman. And I think that's perhaps, the point of the film.
I like that. I never thought about that before.
That's really well said.
Yeah, I got some trivia, unless you guys got other stuff to talk about plot-wise. Question-wise. I'll blast through these. To remind you of the drill, I'm going to blast through these. If you want to say anything about any of them, just say it, and we can talk about it. But I'll just go through it kind of quickly.
Enhanced.
If you have seen, so first of all, Andy, there's a 3.5 hour long Blade Runner documentary for the original that you should see. It's really good.
That sounds terrible.
Really? It's almost.
No, just kidding.
I mean,
I'd probably like it more than the actual film.
You might, because it's pretty cool how
3.5 hours. So yikes!
It is deep. Yeah, you can watch it on 1.5 speed. It's a good way to do documentaries like that.
Don't forget to take notes, Andy.
I'm all talk. I would definitely get that for sure.
Yeah. This one has a little one. So this one's only 22 minutes, so it's not nearly as good. But they haven't had 30 years to put it all together. They tried to use as many miniatures on this movie as they could. They had a bunch of real sets. The set where they were going through the ripped out pages of the orphanage was an old oil tanker junkyard. They climbed into a decaying oil tanker and filmed inside of it. So that was a real world location.
Wow.
The city streets outside his apartment with the snow, that was a little bit computer generated, but the building exteriors were in Hungary, which is where they shot most of it. It's where they built like the sets and things like that, but they shot on location in a bunch of places too. The trash yard was a real location. The first scene with the greenhouses and the tree, that was in the desert, and they built all the greenhouses in the house. That was all made, but it was like a set outside on location somewhere in Hungary. The cinematographer, Deakins.
Oh, I know this one. Roger Deakins.
Roger Deakins. He was given full control.
Legend.
He's a legend. He won his first. He got nominated for 13 Oscars, 12 or 13 before this movie, and this was his first one. Denis Villeneuve gave him full control, as much of a cinematographer can have. Like, he was a part of the set design. He was a part of the shot design. Him and Denis worked on it side by side the entire way. He was pretty much a co-director, and that shows, like, they were always next to each other in the making of, just like talking about how they were going to shoot it. A lot of the sets they had, like the creator, the sleep doctor or whatever you want to call her, that little device was kind of real. They actually made a device that all the buttons she played on the side, like an accordion, would expand and twist and turn all those things. So none of that stuff was like CG or anything.
Oh, it still seemed a very limited device to make memories. Like, you'd need to be like hardcore programming or something, you'd think, instead of just have some knobs to twist and be able to do a whole birthday scene.
You'd think so. Maybe it can read her mind too. I don't know.
That's a good point.
It was cool how they did that birthday scene too. They had like footage of how they did it. The birthday cake was CG, but they built this birthday cake type thing that they had on a swivel that had lights on top of fake little candles. So the light on her face was real. So as she like spun the birthday cake around in her, CG world, they actually had real lights on her face because replicating real lighting in CG is like impossible apparently.
Impossible, right? Yeah.
Oh.
The original guy who did all the special effects, his name is Sid, something I forget his last name. I didn't write it down in my notes. He was the guy who did all the special effects for the original Blade Runner, and they brought him on. He's pretty old now, but they wanted him to do the Vegas set to get a little original flavor in this one as well. So he did all the Vegas stuff.
Oh, Sid Mead. So this is the
Yes.
futurist guy. And he wasn't necessarily, I didn't know if he did all the special effects. I just thought he helped to visualize everything.
Yes, he did all the architectural design of the Vegas stuff.
Mm-hmm. And he didn't necessarily build it or anything, but
No,
he just
no.
sort of like, he did all the sketches.
He drew
and
it up.
stuff.
Right, yeah.
I think that the Las Vegas shooting was probably my favorite, just single part of that film. I think the colors and the lighting were
The Elvis part?
fantastic. Well, I mean, even the brightly sort of the orange look of the apartment, and then with sort of that fight scene in the bar, I think all of that was just like, if you're going to take a single sequence and show somebody like the Blade Runner aesthetic, I think that's probably the best one, at least from 2049.
Yeah. I would recommend, though, there are 3 shorts that come with a physical copy of this movie. One is an anime, 2 are live action shorts. One takes place in 2022 and it's an anime and it explains the blackout. One takes place in 2036 and it actually has Jared Leto in it. So you know how like the beginning crawl of this movie talks about how Replicant production was put on hold. The second short shows you how it was put back into production, how he like convinced, I guess, a board of directors or whoever it was in the short that they should start doing it again. And the last one is 2048, a year before this one, and it has David Bautista in it. And it kind of shows how they end up finding him, like how he leaves a breadcrumb trail back to his house.
So were those shot purposefully to be separate from the film, or were they cut out from the original
They were
version?
made to be separate. And I'm not sure where the money came for them, because at least for the third one with the David Bautista, like the production design is really good and they're different sets than what they had in the movie. So I don't know where they got the money from, but they were made to be separate.
Are they directed by Villeneuve, or are they
No,
guest directors?
so he said they were guest directors. There were 2. I think one of them made the anime and the other one, I imagine, made the 2 live action ones.
I thought did Scott do one or no?
He didn't say Scott. Actually, I didn't look this up. He said 2 of his artist friends he asked to do 3 shorts is all Villeneuve said. Yeah, that's all I got.
Hey.
That's fascinating. I'll have to look those up. I didn't know those existed.
Yeah, one's 2022, Blackout, 2036, Nexus Dawn, and 2048. I didn't write the name down for that one.
Yeah, I got it. I ended up just buying it because I got desperate and couldn't find this to rent cheap. So
If you have a 4K
Yeah.
TV, it's totally worth buying the 4K disc.
Yeah, did you notice that there weren't any rentals anyway?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then the ones that you would rent, they fucking HD these days. I've been
Yeah.
noticing that. Like, that's not even close to what we need.
What do we need?
4K. We're talking about HD, like regular fucking 720p HD. I'm getting like crap from when I'm renting it on
Oh,
for
that
$3.
sucks.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
low quality as fuck. Definitely not 4K.
That sucks.
It's like 1980 by whatever.
So, TC, would you put it in the top? Well, this isn't even on the top 250. Is this question?
Yeah, so I
valid?
don't
it'd
have
still
to.
be on your
Hey, I
personal
don't have to.
250.
Probably not. I'll probably never watch it again.
Oh. John?
I think this is a yes for me.
Yeah?
Nice.
Andy, if you had a top 250 of the best movies ever made, not your, well, you can pick either one. Either your personal top 250 or what you think are the best 250 movies ever made. Would 2049 be on one of those lists? Your choice.
I would say yes, but with a caveat that I would only have one of the Blade Runners, because I think while I do think 2049 is better than the original one, I don't think like if I had a 250 list, I would want 2 spots taken up by this franchise.
So which one would you
hell
pick?
of a
So
way
you
to
would
put
pick
it, Andy.
2049. Yeah.
I'd put 2049.
Yeah.
What about the
There's this
originality of the
dissing on it
original
one
one?
last
Come
time.
on. All it started, The Matrix, Dark City, Ghost in the Shell, I don't know, Children of Men, and any like dark post-apocalyptic sci-fi probably owes it to the original, including this one.
I'd put a footnote. 2049.
Put a footnote.
See, also of interested, but
See
not
Appendix
as good.
2.
I acknowledge it's not as original, but it's
Yeah.
better, so screw you.
I have a very complicated 250 list.
Yeah, a lot of footnotes, huge appendix.
Yeah. Yep. Just like the last Lord of the Rings book.
And I would take up 2 spots. But yeah, Andy, why don't you hit us again with the theater stuff? And also thank you for being on the episode.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Yeah, no problem. I love this. Anytime you need someone to disagree with John, let me know, and I'll.
Well, we already do that enough. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Check us out at Grey Duck Theater, GrayTheater. Gray and Duck is in the middle. I just spelled the ones that are normally different. Grey Duck Theater. We're on Twitter. Check out our Instagram, our Facebook. We're everywhere. Hopefully, we will open the first week of March. Our first film is going to be a Charlie Chaplin silent film, Gold Rush, and then from there we'll expand to a lot of other stuff.
That was on the
but
list.
Super exciting. Yeah. Chaplin is so good.
Classic.
Are you guys silent film fans at all?
We have watched a few. Some of us hate them at TC, and there are other. It depends on the movie, really. We have yet to see a Chaplin movie yet, though.
That's true. I realized how much of like a film snob douche I just sounded like. Are you guys into silent films?
Guys into silent films? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You guys know old radio? No.
I promise I'm a likable person in real life.
What about ham radio? You guys like ham radio? You sitting on those airwaves? Shortwave? What do you think? Shortwave?
TC, we owe John a visit at some point. And when we do, we should definitely swing by the theater and
Oh, yeah.
meet you, Andy, and also
we should
check out a
do
movie
a live
sometimes.
show. We should do a live show.
I think I've told you guys that. Anytime you guys come to Rochester, live show at Grey Duck Theater.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be great.
Let's just do it on a movie that I, can pay attention
Like-
to.
Yes, we'll pick an easy one. How about, well, I don't know.
I need
We'll
like a
find one.
baby video or something. Just like colors and sounds. That's good. That's good.
But yeah, thank you for listening, everyone. You can go to our website,
Yeah.
mission250filmcast.com. Our list is frozen, and all of our older episodes are there too. You can follow us in your favorite podcast app, and we're on Facebook and Twitter.
Thanks, Andy, for being on, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andy.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for inviting me back. I loved it.
Absolutely.
What do we got next week, Denny? by the
Oh,
way?
shit. We're doing another movie. Next week, we're
Yeah.
doing the 2009 movie, The Secret in Their Eyes. This movie won Best Foreign Picture in 2009.
And
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a pretty fucked up story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their synopsis is, retired legal counselor writes a novel hoping to find closure for one of his past unresolved homicide cases and for his unreciprocated love with his superior, both of which still haunt him decades later.
Yeah. And small budget, so hopefully it's a lot about story.
Yeah, sounds like it. They remade this movie too in 2015, and it's supposed to suck. So
let's stick. I mean, that's
Let's
pretty
watch that
close.
one instead.
Why did they go? Why did they go for it so soon?
I don't know.
It's been 6 years. We're good. Fuck it. Let's do it again.
Hey, remember that movie 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Anyone want to try that again? No?
Again.
All right. All right. Cool. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks,
and,
guys.
Yeah.
Later, Andy.
you can stay on, Andy, though. We won't actually hang up on you right now. But
Yeah, we usually talk.
Yeah, bye.